Namaste and welcome everyone. Thank you for being here again this week. We're now into episode 4, chapter 5, The Voices of Poets. I wanted to reflect on a review that an author friend of mine, James A. Wilhelm, said about this book. This book will surprise you. It will cause you to reflect on life's values and potential. It will take you beyond life on earth into the realm of the eternal where you will discover yourself. Thank you, James, for that. It's how I felt this came out of me for sure in this form. So let's see where it takes you, if anywhere in particular. Chapter 5, Voices of Poets. I can see that you've been having fun expressing from your seat of divinity, says Waldo to Christo and Penelope. Are you beginning to weave all this together? He asked Penelope, making obvious reference to the archetype represented by her name. She is stunned a bit at first, but then discovers with a deep breath and answers, "Not quite yet, at least on this plane. But I'm sure a magnificent tapestry is bound to result before long." "And you, Christo, how is all this treating you?" Waldo asked. "Divinely, as only truth can," he says in return, to the delight of his companions. "Oh, yes, divinely. That I know," says Penelope. "Well, then," says Waldo upon reflection, "you are indeed weaving all this as you must, Penelope. Perhaps you just aren't giving yourself the credit you deserve." "No, I don't think that's it," Penelope says in thoughtful response. "It's just that I haven't grown fully accustomed to the power of spiritual telepathy, that's all." "Oh, you know precisely what it is, Penelope. You just haven't let yourself live it fully yet," Waldo responds with aplomb. "Just let yourself be what you are, and not who you still think you are, even for this little bit. Let it all go, and you'll suddenly find yourself feeling right at home, which, as you surely know, is where you always have been and always will be, at home with yourself." Just as he says those last words, Penelope can feel herself give permission to just be in her authenticity, and her kinship with Waldo shifts into absolute reality. Goosebumps cover her body, and her spine tingles all the way to her crown in a recognition of that truth. Oh my, she says, as she seemingly floats away. "This is heavenly. Now what do I do?" she asks Waldo, with Crystal standing by, partaking what his friend now demonstrates from the seat of familiarity. "Do? What do you now do?" Waldo asks, feigning disbelief. "Why, my dear Penelope, you don't do anything. You just let yourself be, and let all the rest take care of itself." He pauses for a moment to let all this sink in, and then asks, "There, isn't that better? Don't you feel grounded in your real truth now?" "Well, yes," Penelope responds. "I guess I could say that. Although I think this will need some getting used to before I can respond fully." "There's no need to respond at all," Penelope offers Christo. "There's only the need to be what you already are, and you are now witnessing that. So just let yourself be. You are that, remember?" "Yes, I know I am that, but this is the first time I've felt like that. This is marvelous." "Oh, you'll get used to it, just as I did," says Christo. "What you don't know is that this is my second visit here, so I'm one up on you in that way. But you sure have caught up with me in record time. Whoops, in no time at all, I mean," Christo says, to Penelope's surprise. "Now I get it. I thought you knew something was going on that I didn't quite understand, but I couldn't figure out what it was. The something you knew wasn't intellectual at all. It was fully spiritual in nature. And now that I've let my spiritual nature have its way with me, I can just be what I am, like you are being what you are. Me too, says Waldo. Don't forget me, or any of the other guests here tonight. We're all just being what we are and nothing but. And that's what makes us authentic. Welcome home, dear one. Welcome home. Oh, thank you, Waldo. I'm so pleased to feel that home at last. Well, here is where you are, so you might as well enjoy it to the fullest, Waldo, sure, sir. In that regard, let me now introduce you to the Pasta Course companions. These folks represent what those on earth would call the Poet Society, or at least several members of it. Here, however, in this world of spirit, we all know better, don't we? We're all poetic expressions in waiting. All we have to do is be in the fullness of our loving essence, and it expresses poetically throughout our unique being. So, for now, you can take these folks to be reflections of poetic genius. During your next course, you'll meet some who are from each category, but in a spiritual sense, you are absolutely poetic. No matter what anyone these are absolutely poetic, no matter what anyone might otherwise label them. So here we go. Here at this table, where these three poets await you, Penelope and Christo, is my genuine pleasure to introduce you to my dear friends, Poet Laureate Rita Dove and William Wordsworth. And this is Carl Sandburg. Folks, this is Penelope and Christo, our honorees tonight, to which Penelope and Christo respond with looks of disbelief. Oh, you hadn't figured that out yet, asked Waldo? Then proceeds, already knowing the answer to his query. Well, I suppose it's okay to break the news now, although you'll find out more about this later. You see, some of us have been called light workers over the years, although there haven't been many to know about us with that moniker attached. And we decided from time to time to honor one or several of those we want to cite as current-day light workers. And you two certainly meet that designation with great favor. I know, very much like the news about spiritual telepathy, this is a bit of a shock to you. But the designation is well deserved, so for now, just sit back and enjoy it. Christo has been part of honoring yet another light worker before, so at least he is slightly familiar with our process. But he has sworn not to give it away, just so you can benefit from it freshly, unadorned by anticipation or expectation. And, well, I suppose we can surprise even Christo, so be careful not to lock into the predisposition either, Christo. I must admit, begins Penelope in response, that I've been somewhat confused and knocked off my center ever since I received your gracious invitation, Waldo. But I'll do my best to be what I am rather than worrying about what I might not be. You don't have to worry about me either, Christo says, because I let it all go but the way ever since my last visit here, which cleared me of all the rubbish I had been carrying that clouded the truth from me. I'm open to whatever you have to send our way, anything at all. That's good news, Waldo responds, because although you have met and will be meeting some of those who wanted to be with you tonight, both the so-called living and those that have passed, I want you to know with every assurance that this is only the tip of the proverbial iceberg. You both are surrounded by a limitless host of angels who both support and applaud your every move. I have to admit that I've felt such strong feelings in both regards lately. But from what you've just told us, Miss Penelope, I suspect that's only because I've been letting myself be now. I had been hoping that one day I'd be able to let go completely of all that has been holding me back from expressing only what I am. Yes, Penelope, you've done a marvelous job of letting go, of forgiving yourself from all that has burdened you from past memories. And you finally have let go of all good memories, good and bad, and everything in between. All of them are burdens, and that they keep one tied to the past rather than being totally free to live only in the present, in now. It is impossible to express the way is truth in life when we are encumbered with memories of past events and circumstances, even if we don't think we are. Such ties are inevitable, that is, until we express our heartfelt desire to be only in the present, which with all that comes to us only there. Both you and Christo have reached this point now. Well done. Well, it's time for me to take leave for a while, and I'll return as necessary. Have fun, dear friends. As before, Waldo fades away, and the cast of five is left to their own devices. He sure is a corker, isn't he, suggests Wordsworth, a regular, reasoning, self-sufficing thing, and an intellectual all in all. His life is testimony to the division that faith is passionate intuition. Oh, I'd say he's much more than that, Carl interjects. He's a spiritual being from birth, I do believe. Of all the folks I've known, he's the clearest about what he is and thus how he is to manifest that. What do you mean, asked Penelope. Carl begins, well, as you know so well, Waldo knows of his divinity, and he honors that very clearly and precisely, and always. What is good about this is that he knows that he walks truth as none other before him or since has done. Well, save a few. But once one understands this about himself, then how he treats another becomes very clear. We can treat another only as we treat ourselves, which in this case means as the divine each of us is.
One moment. Okay, I found this on the web for as a quarter as it suggests Wordsworth a regular reasoning self, a facing thing in an...
Well, that was a weird interruption. From whence it came, I have no idea. Well, anyhow, let's get back to this. Sorry for the interruption. This also means, William is quick to add, that one accepts only the truth that comes through him, and at the very same time, he expresses genius when he can see that this truth also works for others. Perhaps not exactly in the same detail, mind you, but in the same nature. And being true to yourself, adds Rita, really means being true to all the complexities of the human spirit. I would have said that this means being true to all the simplicity of the spiritual world, Penelope suggests for clarity. I don't mean to be argumentative in this regard, Rita, but yet I must honor what comes through me as truth. Even as I know you now, ever so briefly, I can tell what we mean the same thing by what each of us has said. And yet truth has arrived in my presence looking someone different to the naked eye. Oh, you are absolutely correct, Penelope, rejoins Rita. We are saying exactly the same thing. And because of our differing histories, we color what we come to know as truth from a palette of that history. Crystal listens carefully to the exchange and adds, but isn't the idea to let go of history and bring ourselves to life standing naked of all that has been, as well as from all the desires of the future? That is a splendid observation, notes Carl, because all human actions are equivalent and all are on principle doomed to failure. And why is that? Simply because when we act out of our humanness, out of ego, you might say, then such illusions can produce only more illusions and never truth. In this way, they are failures and always will be, because truth is all there really is. All else, while not strictly a failure, is really non-existent and thus not truth at all. Well then, if all such human actions are failures, Crystal posits, doesn't it make sense by spiritual means that we carry failure forward when we bring our human history with us? Not waiting for affirmation of his treatise, he continues, that being the case, it would be wise indeed to shift our energy to living only the way, which is truth expressed, forming life in each present moment for us. Is that not so? One would certainly think so, spiritually that is, Penelope answers. In this way, we don't also need to be concerned about anything we've said or done in the past, because we're only living truth each moment. That sounds to me like a perfect definition of integrity. And authenticity, adds Carl. Such conversation is so stimulating, and I, for one, greatly appreciate your contributions, you two. It's so delightful to see that you are so open to truth, rather than wallowing in illusion. As I have thought before, man may be born, but in order to be born, he must first die, and in order to die, he must first awake. That idea sounds very familiar to me, Carl, says William. Actually, both of your ideas do. I agree that such conversation is so stimulating. A day spent in a round of serious, strenuous idleness is such a dull thing. From my point of view, chimes Rita, all the moments that make up a human being have to be written about, talked about, painted, danced, in order to really talk about life. And for me personally, I came to realize that I was capable of a larger voice. There is a more public utterance I can make as a poet. Amen, I say to that, Rita praises William. I feel the same way. And I think that I now recognize the familiarity I have with Carl's poetic declaration about life and death. It sounds vaguely like something the Master Jesus might have said. It ought to, rejoins Carl, for it was inspired by Jesus. My sentiment is meant to clarify that same principle. That is, when one dies, he finds life. So many have taken that to mean that when one dies, she finds real life in the company of God. Talk about a limited view of life. But perhaps we can get to that a little later. What I really mean is that one must first become aware. Awareness being a perfectly perfect spiritual term. Aware of what illusions are appearing before her before she can step away from or die to them. Then she can be born yet again, this time to truth, and live only from truth as her way of life. So nicely said, Carl, William comments. It's no wonder that you fill your paper with breathings of your heart. So very well said. Inspiration really does the job, does she not? As Christo and I have been treating this same message, truth has added what some might consider an outrageous tag onto it. As each new truth is born within us, we hold it as a virgin birth, that is fresh and pure and unadulterated by illusion. Such new birth is virgin to our ears of understanding, although spiritually is part of the eternal now. In that way, consciousness is a midwife that brings the newborn child of God, that is, truth, into the world. It is truth that we then worship. Hence, adds Christo, as in heaven, so on earth. Of course, truth expressed in this way does excite and incite people of a more traditional conservative mindset. Yes, but offers Rita, it isn't our job as light workers to inspire people to become more familiar with their innate state of enlightenment. To use a simple example, canaries are birds that, of course, have a beautiful song. It's also a term that musicians use for the female vocalist. One man's bread is another man's steak, some say. Or maybe I've got that one a little mixed up. More to the point, however, for many years, I thought a poem was a whisper overheard, not an aria heard. Do you see the subtle difference? Sometimes all it takes is a bump in the night, while at others it takes a stronger sense, like an earthquake, to make us aware. I commend you for your approach here, too. As do I, exclaims William. What you have done is equivalent to the blessed mood in which the burthen of the mystery, in which the heavy and weary weight of all this unintelligible world is lightened. Nowadays, life is burdened by the pace of superficiality of thought and communication. So anything you can do to shift death to the reality of life again will be a great boon to society at large. And you are doing exactly that. So perhaps you can now understand better why you're being honored here tonight. Thank you, says Christo. I, for one, feel honored and humbled by this acknowledgement, yet seek it not. My only purpose is to surrender to the truth that speaks through me, which is what I am now doing. Me too, Penelope quickly adds her sentiment, and I have each of you to thank for inspiring me to follow the spiritual way as truth for me. And as you said so well, William, this world we now live in is full of so much that distracts us from truth. Oh, yes, William interrupts, for the human mind is capable of excitement without the application of gross and violent stimulants, and we must have very faint perception of its beauty and dignity. Who does not know this? But then, where in our society does one find beauty and dignity, with so many symbols to the contrary being sent into the environment? I mean, what is needed is not the will to believe, but the wish to find out. Isn't it also that many people really don't know what they believe or wish to find out because they have no idea where to look for the truth of any matter? Christa wisely posits. The only teacher that routinely does that in the lives of so many in Western culture is the figure of Jesus. Look within for your own awareness where God resides, Jesus said. Yet people still rely for their answers on a very small God seen as separate from them, as well as all the gods of external validation and affirmation they idolize. Real truth can be found only by going within us to the seat of truth. And if we would just set aside all this external claptrap, we can once again find that seat of truth under the guidance of consciousness. Then we can remember with truth as the real way for us. How nicely put, Christo, compliments William. Said with the poet's tongue, with an eye made quiet by the power of harmony and the deep power of joy, we see into the life of things. Precious, William, and a marvelous formula for remembering our lives and for shaping our lives through awareness, affirms Rita. I heard remembering our lives as remembering with life, Rita, suggests Penelope. Did I hear you correctly? Not quite, but you got the meaning absolutely correct, Penelope. Thanks for the distinction. Ah, yes, back of every mistaken venture and defeat, even if it be so seemingly small as making clear meaning, is the laughter of wisdom, if you listen, says Carl. I can hear wisdom laugh at even this small distinction between intent and truth heard. Why has this escaped mankind until this very moment? Wisdom seems to be laughing. Yet it is this exact moment that brought it to fruition. Do we take life and ourselves? We do, don't we, all too seriously. Me, on the other hand, I'm an idealist. I believe in everything. I am only looking for proofs, he adds, mocking wisdom's usual expression. The point, is it not, asked Penelope, that you know precisely where to look? Precisely is precisely the correct adverb, Penelope. Do you know I had taken a course in ethics? I read a thick textbook, heard the class discussions, and came out of it saying I hadn't learned the thing I didn't know about morals and what is right and wrong in human conduct. Isn't that the pits? Well, Carl, as you know, it's only because you knew in the bottom of your heart, the only place in which truth resides, in your divine being, what morals and right and wrong were from the very beginning. All the class did was to remind you that this was so, says Waldo, appearing again, as if from nowhere. Yes, I know that now perfectly well, my dear friend. As added testament to your wisdom, let us conclude our conversation today with this. I tell you the past is a bucket of ashes, so live not in your yesterdays nor just for tomorrow, but in the here and now. Keep moving and forget past mortems. And remember, no one can jump on the future. No one can get a jump on the future. I take my hat off to you, for this is a truth you have taught so well. Thank you, Carl, begins Waldo. You are too kind, yet correcting your statement of being. It's all about the character of now and the truth we meet here, found only within, as divinity. I had to learn that the hard way, confesses Rita. I had heard of Shakespeare, sure, but I didn't know about the value of Shakespeare, of Emily Dickinson, or of all these people that I was reading. Finally, I learned that I didn't have to be absolutely faithful according to biographical truth. I could go after inner truth. And once I knew that, that freed me. And as Mary Baker Eddy would say to that, it is the truth that makes us free, as Waldo. Here again, I feel the need for a clear distinction to be made, interjects Penelope. I know that Mrs. Eddy has said that it was truth that makes us free, but what rings true to me is that it is the meaning of truth that makes us free, along with a way of coming to truth. Without the way and the real meaning of truth, we remain jailed in the figments of illusion we have taken to be truth. So, ladies and gentlemen, you now see, if you hadn't already done so, why this precious being named Penelope is one of the two we honor tonight. Waldo closes with commentary. I take it this means we're heading to the next course, says Christo, but before we do, I'd like to thank our genial, brilliant hosts and hostess for honoring us with their wisdom. Thank you from the bottom of my heart, and that is the truth, he adds with an ironic laugh. This has been special for me too, adds Penelope. I do hope we meet again, knowing that we will, she says, before thinking her comment all the way through. Oh, of course, we will be seeing one another again. Of that I am now sure, she adds with confidence. Yes, you shall, adds Waldo, for good measure. And if you want to hear more about Shakespeare and Rita, just tune in, because Penelope and Krista will be speaking with them shortly, along with another special friend of mine. Despite any lingering sliver of doubt, Penelope and Krista look at one another and shrug their shoulders as a sign of delight and of acceptance, which is sure to come. So that was the end of Chapter 5, Episode 4 of Coming Together to listen to the invitation, part of the Inward Way series. I hope that you have, between now and the next time we meet together, a beautiful life. Be safe, be happy, be you. I'll close with a quick piece that I saw this last week. You are valuable because you exist, not because of what you do or what you have done, but simply because you are. Be who you are. No, I change that. Be what you are. Love personified. Be well. Be happy. Namaste. I love you.